What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to cover a handful of quirks and bugs that have popped up since the Season 2 Reloaded update that I haven't covered yet, one of which being a massive, I believe unintentional buff to the tracker perk. So let's start off with that since that will be the main content of this video, although there are a few really important things that I want to point out toward the end, so don't miss out on those ones. But with tracker, before the Season 2 Reloaded updates, the way this worked is when you aim down sight at an enemy player, it will automatically ping them for you as well as your teammates, and that live ping will follow them in real time for a short period of time. So even if they go behind a wall, you will still see that diamond follow them in real time for 3 seconds. But the big limitation of this pre-patch was there was a very notable cooldown between these pings. So you couldn't just like sweep your aim across an area and auto ping everybody on the enemy team. You would get one ping and then you'd have to wait a while before it would automatically ping someone again. And unfortunately, this is a perk where I didn't do a detailed breakdown in the past, so I don't have the exact values for what that cooldown was. But I do know with the few times that I did use tracker, there was definitely a notable cooldown, and that cooldown appears to be gone after the Season 2 Reloaded update. And what this means is you can basically just sweep your aim across multiple enemies. It will ping all of them. And if you're tracking one single enemy, the moment that live ping fades away after 3 seconds of being pinged, you will immediately re-ping them again as long as you're still aiming down sight in their direction. And just a reminder, this isn't just working for you, this works for your entire team. So even just having one person on your team using tracker is insanely beneficial now after this update. And then one other thing I wanted to point out here, which I'll be honest, I'm uncertain if it worked this way pre-patch, but I still want to point it out here. When pinged, enemy players will also have a red outline around their body. Now, you can't see this outline through walls or anything, but it can help highlight them in a darker environment and just make them a little bit easier to see. They pop a little bit more. And again, this works for not only you, but also your teammates. They will also see them highlighted in red. So I know I've already seen a few comments from people wondering, why do my enemies suddenly have a red outline? Well, this is just somebody on your team is using tracker and it keeps highlighting these enemies for you. So obviously after this update, tracker is far more powerful than it once was. Again, I do suspect this is just a bug and this was unintentional. I know one thing they adjusted with tracker is it wasn't working properly in free-for-all, and they apparently fixed that bug. And I think in fixing that bug, they introduced this new bug, which essentially just eliminated that cooldown on tracker. But at least as of right now, having at least one player on the team using tracker is very valuable. I think it would be probably overkill to have like everybody using it, but just 1 or 2 guys can really do a lot of damage with that now. And as a result, just in case you weren't aware, if you want to avoid this being used against you, cold-blooded is the counter to tracker. If you're using cold-blooded, a tracker user will not be able to auto-ping you at all, and therefore you won't have to worry about this tracker spam. So that's the first big thing that's having a pretty big effect on the game overall. Next up, something that many people noticed and were asking me about is, it appears, at least on the GPR 91, while they did buff it nicely with the Season 2 Reloaded update, it appears they also unintentionally reverted the visual recoil back to how it was with most of the guns when the game first launched. As you can see here, this is what the recoil looked like pre-patch with the GPR with no attachments. So this was after the visual recoil fix, but before the Season 2 Reloaded update. And this is what it looks like post-patch. And I'll keep looping them one after the other. Just focus especially on the rear sight and how much it's shaking. And you can see there is a very clear difference here in the amount of visual recoil that you're experiencing post-patch compared to pre-patch, and that shouldn't be the case. Now, this did prompt me to test every gun in the game, so I tested every other gun, and as far as I can tell, none of the other guns had their visual recoil reverted. I heard a couple mentions about the AK-74 also being reverted, but based on my testing, that's not the case. So it looks like this is just the GPR 91, and hopefully this is something they can get on top of and fix soon. Now, after that one, another common bug that a lot of people, myself included, have been experiencing is if you had forward intel on your class setup before Season 2 Reloaded, when you spawn in with that class setup, you may or may not have noticed that your minimap is not zoomed out, and you're seeing red dots instead of arrows on your minimap for enemy players, because forward intel just broke on these class setups. Now, thankfully, they didn't entirely break forward intel, and what I've found is if you are experiencing this, all you have to do is while you're in a match, edit your class setup, switch away from forward intel and then back to forward intel, and that should just reactivate it, and it should be working from there on out for you. Unfortunately though, it looks like you have to do this for every single class setup that has forward intel equipped, so make sure you're checking that when you're spawning in with a forward intel class. And I do want to point out, while this fix has worked most of the time for me, there have been a couple cases where this didn't actually work. I couldn't get forward intel to reactivate on that particular class setup. So definitely something to be aware of, and again, hopefully this is something they can get on top of soon, because obviously it sucks to not have our perks working properly, and we shouldn't have to be using a workaround just so that our perks will actually activate in the game. And on that note, well, so far I've only noticed this happening with forward intel. Please let me know in the comments if you've been noticing or you feel like another perk hasn't been activating for you and actually working even though it's on your class setup. Because forward intel is pretty obvious and easy to see, whereas for some of the other perks, it might be a bit more subtle and harder to notice unless you're really looking for it. Now after that, you might remember with the Season 2 Reloaded update, when it first came out, it actually broke the challenge tracker and they removed it from the game temporarily. They have now added that back into the game, and something else I've noticed is it looks like they improved it, or at least they tried to improve it a little bit by adding the ability to scroll up and down through your track challenges. Previously, this was my big complaint with the new challenge tracker in this game, is you could only actually see one of the camo challenges, for instance, that you were tracking once you were in a match. You couldn't scroll through and see all 10 of them, which largely defeats the purpose of having that challenge tracker. So it looks like they tried to improve it there, but what I've noticed is, while it mentions that you can scroll, I've been unable to scroll while in a match between my track challenges, although I have heard from others that it is working just fine for them, so maybe this is just a bug that I'm currently experiencing. At the end of the day, while it's nice to see that they made a slight improvement here, I still think this is far from ideal, and you shouldn't have to be scrolling around just to check your progress on your challenges in the middle of a game. In my eyes, this should be displayed immediately. When you open the start screen, you shouldn't have to navigate anywhere to try to find this. You should be able to just press start and see every single one of your track challenges immediately, so you can just really quickly check where you're at and then get back into the fight. That works excellent in Modern Warfare 3. I really like how they implemented it there, and I'm just not a fan of their implementation so far in Black Ops 6. I appreciate the fact that they are trying to make improvements here, and yes, at least we have the ability now to scroll through those, assuming it's working for you. But it's still just far from ideal in my eyes, and I think in this case, keeping it as simple as possible is the ideal scenario, so you don't have to be wasting your valuable game time scrolling through menus just to see what your challenge progress is. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for the primary bugs and issues that have popped up that I haven't covered already with the Season 2 Reloaded updates. Another quick thing I wanted to point out is just performance-wise, I've been seeing a lot of complaints about FPS drops, not only on PC, but also on consoles. And while I haven't really noticed this at all myself, it does appear that there's enough people complaining about this that it is a real issue for at least a portion of the player base. So if you are experiencing that issue, regardless of your platform, please let me know. Have you guys noticed any FPS drops since this update? And I guess at this point, I should just tag on, have you guys experienced any other issues that I haven't mentioned in today's video that recently popped up with the Season 2 Reloaded update? There are, of course, issues that are still present from before that update, like the Dreadnought bug, for instance, where after you call in a Dreadnought, if you survive that full duration, when you come out of the Dreadnought, you're often unable to change stances at all. You can't jump, you can't slide, you can't crouch, you can't prone, or sometimes even worse, you get stuck in a prone and you can't stand up. That bug is still present alongside others, but please let me know how things are performing for you guys after this update. I'm really curious to know if you guys are experiencing any other bugs. And if you guys enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.